Drunk dudes in a gun room, man. So this is a show that has been in the making, and I am looking forward to it, man. So today we've got Lane Carlson. He has a master's degree in spiritual psychology, and today we are going to be talking about therapy through the world of psychedelics. Lane is originally from Stillwater, Minnesota, and now lives in Los Angeles. He's working as a psychedelic therapist, a sound practitioner, integrating transformational breathwork and meditational, as well as a facilitation coach through a lot of stuff we're going to get into that I probably don't know nothing about. So let's bring on Lane. Hey,
how's it going, brother?
Good, man. It sounds like you got a lot of stuff going on, brother.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's full time into psychedelic healing. So everything that I'm doing, it really incorporates around a lot of the psychedelics and sound. So you can think of me as a psychedelic therapist.
Okay.
Probably the easiest way to describe what I'm doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking, how did you get into this? Let's start with that.
Yeah. I mean, look, as you described in the show, by the way, I loved your intro for the show. It's great.
Thank you.
So, I mean, honestly, through my own healing, that's how I got into all of this. My first mushroom experience was 20 plus years ago. And, coming from Minnesota, Stillwater, Minnesota, there's not a lot of people talking about psychedelics. Nobody was doing this for healing, for instance. All of our healing was done around, cracking beers and, more burying our emotions, especially as guys. It was, we sit around a red or a blue cooler and, that's how we dealt with things. So, I was diagnosed with depression as a kid. And so I had no idea what that meant. I was 13, 14 years old, but I was just surrounded by darkness. I had no idea why I was sad, why I was crying, why I was so emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I got through it at a very young age, and it was really just through the help of my mom at the time telling me, look, you're not going to feel this way forever. You're going to get better. I was like, what do I got to do? It was like, you got to eat well, take care of yourself. And so that started my journey through really taking care of myself, health and wellness wise. And it was really later in life when these bouts of depression and sadness, and really it was around my lack of purpose in life. Well, what am I doing with my life? And this was in my 30s. And that's when I went down the road of ayahuasca. That's when I went and found ayahuasca, started doing more of these healing retreats. And so when I found psychedelics to help heal myself through my own stress, anxiety, and depression, that's when I really just went all in. I saw what it did for me, felt what it did for me. That's when I went back to school for my master's in spiritual psychology. And then I went full time into tying both of those worlds in, spiritual psychology and psychedelics, and helping, I'm sure from vets to moms of three dealing with depression to, you name it, everybody's dealing with it in some level. And so, that's how I can do it.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that there definitely is a mental health crisis throughout the world, not just in the veteran community,
Sure.
just in any one particular. I mean, you've got kids that are out there shooting up schools, and that has nothing to do with the veteran community. That has nothing to do with any of the other things. That's its own problem. So if that doesn't tell you that the problems have reached throughout the whole United States, I ain't gonna say the world because I can't speak for the world, but there is a problem in the United States.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, I'm similar to you. I chose drinking, and that's how I dealt with it. And it was the same way when I was in the military. It was, you didn't talk about your problems. If you were broke, then you were weak, and that's just the way we dealt with it. You just drove off, So I followed the trend of a lot of others. As I was getting ready to retire, suicide became the option that I started looking at and putting those things in line. And when that didn't happen, and I was still compressing and everything else, I ended up blowing up and destroying parts of my family and relationships between me and my son. And that's when I finally, reached out and got some help, and things slowly turned around. And it wasn't until this last 2 years that I started hearing about psychedelics.
Okay.
And, I literally started hearing it from on the Joe Rogan show. And so when I first started hearing it from there, I was like, man, this just sounds like somebody just out there using drugs to get through things. Well, I did that with alcohol, But then when I started listening to it about from the Sean Ryan show, I seen the other side of it. And that's when I started doing some research, and it seems to be some legitimacy behind it after I started doing some research. So if you don't mind, can you explain how does this all work? How does it help people?
Yeah. Great question, because I had the same, by the way, the propaganda that happened in the 60s, around, the war on drugs, and they're going to fry your brains, gateway to everything else that's bad in life.
Mhm.
um, they did a good job, and they still, that stigma is around. And so and what's happening now is a lot of the major universities are studying this. A lot of research has gone into, we can touch on, I'll give you the kind of the groundwork of psychedelics
Okay.
from psilocybin's perspective. But what I like to tell people is, it isn't me. It isn't any other facilitator healing you. It's you having the opportunity to heal yourself. And so that's what psychedelics really allows you to do, is commune with, you think of psilocybin, for instance, we'll touch on this one, but it is very ancient wisdom. So we've been doing this for thousands of years, these rites of passages, these ceremonies, taking these magic mushrooms for thousands of years. You can see this depicted on cave walls. You talk about Joe Rogan. He got into Terence McKenna. It was the stoned ape theory,
Mhm.
about how us early humans really became who we are. Our intellect basically tripled in size. Our brains tripled in size some 2 million years ago. And that was highly, this is what they're thinking, that it was due to psychedelics, due to taking mushrooms. Because what we would do is we would follow game trail like we would now. If you're going to go hunting, you follow game trail, you follow the tracks.
Yep.
And so what was happening back then was, obviously there was mushrooms growing out of the excrement of these animals. And then we would take that, and that led to a lot of our intellectual advancements. Our tools got sharper. We started communing. Our empathy got bigger. We started living longer. And I think that's a big reason why we're coming back to mushrooms now today, is, to learn something new about ourselves. And so what psilocybin does, basically, to, basic level on the science level for your brain, is it restricts blood flow to an area of the brain called the default mode network. So people with highly active default mode networks, constantly focusing on the past or constantly focusing on the future, that's a very active default mode network. And so that leads to stress, anxiety, and depression. So when you're consuming psilocybin mushrooms, what it does is literally restricts that blood flow to that part of the brain. And for the 4 to 6 hours, you are just present with what is. And another beautiful thing that happens is, so the way you're listening to me, the way we're, listening to each other, that's a neurological connection. Your body's responding, you're believing what I'm saying, or you're not believing what I'm saying. That's all a neurological connection.
Mhm.
So what psilocybin does is allows your brain to open up to new possibilities. We're connecting new neurological connections called neurogenesis. And so your brain, they've done brain scans of people on psilocybin, and it's lit up like the 4th of July. It's a really beautiful thing, because what it does is it allows you to start uh, realizing a different potential as far as how you can perceive yourself and the outside world. And so sometimes our hardwired thinking, I hate this person, or this isn't going to work for me, that's a neurological connection. When we're on psilocybin, we end up resetting or retraining the brain to think of new possibilities, think of a different way. And so that's why there's really so much beauty around psilocybin helping with PTSD, with or post-traumatic stress and anxiety and depression, because a lot of that is hardwired thinking, or it's constantly ruminating about the past or the future. And so we're able to retrain and recalibrate, reset the brain in a beautiful way.
Okay. So that would make sense then, because there is a lot of hard wiring that comes from the military, especially with the trauma, because I mean, what goes on during combat is not a normal thing. I mean, you can't go over there with the mindset of, oh, they're just people, we're here to help them. That you have to have that rage, the hatred,
Yeah.
and it's either them or you kind of mentality, um, to make it through that. And that's kind of the way you're brainwashed and thought into that. And that brings back beliefs when you come back.
Yeah.
You hear that through a lot of the comments made from the Vietnam era veterans, and you hear it through our generation of war too when they're talking. So what you're saying then is this would be a good alternative for somebody that's dealing with those angers and those resentments against people in general,
Yeah.
about stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd want to add too is, especially in combat, when you're having to be the tip of the spear, you're in fight or flight mode,
Yep.
and your adrenals and everything is heightened. And so it's like when you're coming back, and I feel like this is probably what you dealt with and many other soldiers I've talked to, is like, how do I acclimate back in society where I'm not in that fight or flight mode? And that's why a lot of soldiers are attracted back into being cops or, firefighters, because it gives them a bit of that adrenaline rush. But there is a way to finally calm the brain down, and that is through psilocybin. It's a beautiful way to do that, to not feel that you have to be in that fight or flight mode, but allowing the brain to calm down. So it's really just working on the brain. So you don't have to worry about the rest of the organs of the body either, which is nice. And it's by far the safest thing to go into. It's much safer than alcohol, safer than, caffeine. You just obviously have to, be in a space where you can do it for 4 to 6 hours on a deeper experience. Although what's really popular now is microdosing. So microdosing of psilocybin, you're still meant to be able to take care of kids, drive your car, go to work, but on a micro level, the discussion we had around restricting blood flow to the default mode network in our brain, we're doing that on a very small level, and it's very subtle. Most people, what they tell me is, Lane, I don't know what it is, but I just feel good. That's the power of microdose. It's meant to be able to replace the antidepressants. So what's great is I've had a lot of people get off of antidepressants and start introducing microdose, because I think, SSRIs, antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds are great, if you need them for the short term. I don't feel like it's a great long-term solution.
I agree.
Yeah, just because, man, I've seen it numb a lot of people. It just gets into that. You don't have extreme highs, you don't have extreme lows, but it's numbing. And
Yep.
so if we can allow our body to regulate and do what it does best, we can hit times we're going to be sad, we're going to be, depressed, we're going to be happy. But allow the body to do that, allow it to regulate, and know that it's okay.
Yep. And that's kind of what brought me to Rick's program is a lot of the stuff that I dealt with over there, I'm dealing with, and the VA's got me on Zoloft, and they've got me on a few other things as well. And I can deal with the bad dreams. I can deal with the isolation, being alone, those types of things. The things that I still struggle with is my temper, and that's kind of what brought me to Rick's class, because if I'm on my meds, that 0 to 60 is a lot. It takes a lot longer to get to 60 than it does without them, and it allows me to think a little bit clearer before I say something or do something that I'm going to regret. So my goal is to get off these medications, and again, like I told you, before we started, is where is brought me to looking at alternative,
Nice.
because like you said, it does. It numbs you. I'm happy,
Yeah.
but I don't never have the sadness. I don't have the extreme highs or lows. I'm just, everybody says, "How you doing today?" Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm just here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great, and especially maybe this is a timely conversation. If it is something that you're wanting to do, that's what I help people do, is get off of those meds. Obviously, talk to your doctor too. I have a doctor I work with. So there's a lot of doctors out there that are like, no, right? They don't believe in psychedelics. They don't, they're trained one way. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But if it's your choice, right? It's ultimately, if it's something that you want to do, and if the side effects of, an antidepressant or any type of pharma meds are causing you, upset, or they're not really feeding into the future life that you want, then, it's up to you to make the decision. And, and there's other ways too, breath work, yoga, meditation. These are all ways to, really allow your body to come back to that natural place and state of mind.
Yeah. Um, you know, I know the answer, because we just talked about it. Eric was asking, he says, do you believe it's a gateway, to other drugs? And I agree with you. When they made it, if I'm not mistaken, they made that a Schedule II drug back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Am I right?
They made it Schedule I.
Schedule I. Yeah.
Yes, it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I mean, cannabis back in the day, and mushrooms now is still classified the same as heroin.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to change it, and it's happening. Like Denver and Oregon have paved the way to lead the charge. California's next.
Yeah.
I think, and all in all, enough senators or enough people in power, like, you know what, they've been doing this medicine forever. And so I think there's enough of the new blood coming in to realize that this isn't that bad, and it helps people.
Well, I definitely do think this is about big pharma. I really do, because not one time has the doctor that has put me on my meds ever talked about, at now that I'm stable and doing good, there still has never been no talk about the exit plan.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, well, I'll renew your meds. See you in 3 months.
Yep. Look at you. You're a dollar sign.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I do think that, these are supposed to be meds to help you get through while you're going through therapy and dealing with your issues, not permanently masking your issues, because you're treating symptoms. You're not treating the underlying problem.
That's right.
I can stay on these meds and my temper will be great till I die.
Yep.
Or I can deal with the problem that's causing it, so that I can still go back to being me and not have to take meds every day.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. It's going into the root of it. And I'll tell you, I've had a lot of people going into these experiences. It's like 20 years of psychotherapy in one sitting. So in one 4 to 6 hour experience, you're watching the movie of your life being played out in front of you. And what happens is you start realizing, oh, this is where my challenges still are. This is where I've, some of my downfalls. It also opens up new pathways. It's probably the easiest way to look at it is you're literally closing your eyes, especially with these deep psychedelic experiences that I'll do for people. And it is a movie. And like a movie, you don't want to talk through it. You don't want to really open your eyes and, look anywhere else, except when we close our eyes, we're watching that movie. And you get to be the star of that movie. It's taking you through an experience of, you need to let go of this. This is the trauma that you're still focused on. This is what's really poignant now in your life, or it's opening new pathways. It may tell you also, this medicine may also show you different people you need to stay away from. And it's great, and at the end of the day, you have divine will. You can choose your path in life. But what I always say is ancient wisdom. It's nature speaking to you. This is one of the most intelligent, longest living organisms in the world is fungi, mushrooms, and it's connected with nature. It speaks to, if you can believe this, their root system especially with mushrooms, communicating with trees and plants, and it's unbelievable. So it's one of the largest in the world. It is the largest in the world as far as communication patterns underground. We have the above ground internet, but we also have this below ground, what's called a mycelium network, and that's how the mushrooms communicate. So anyway, you're tapping into that, and it's very very wise. And within that, I feel like we've lost that connection with nature, and that's why a lot of us are remembering now. That's why this conversation is coming up, is we're all remembering, oh yeah, this is what works. Taking plant medicine helps me and will work with me.
Yeah, and again, we don't. What's the side effects from 30 years of taking Zoloft? From myself,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe nothing, but it definitely can't be beneficial either.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I've had a lot of people on antidepressants that, from, low energy to, the low sex drive to my appetite isn't what it used to be, to I'm numb. I go to see my kid's soccer game and I'm like, it's like numb. So whatever side effects there are, that's where I say, does it outweigh the benefits? And I think short term, I think some people need it, but I think especially if it's in the back of your mind of maybe it's something I want to get off of, know that there's ways to do it safely. Yeah.
So, you hear this a lot about people talking about the bad experiences with it. So I assume what they're talking about is when they're dealing through the trauma, and you say you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
Is this, are they reliving these experiences, or is it, because for like me, one of the things that has helped me get to where I am is I have basically been rewriting my life story, my book about this for my kids, to kind of explain why I became from this one guy into turning into this other asshole that they seen.
Yeah.
Not so much, whether I publish it or don't publish it doesn't matter. I just want my kids to know my story.
Nice.
And that has helped me kind of see things from a different perspective as I'm putting it on paper. And so I'm kind of picturing what you're saying as you're, as this outside person watching this film. Is it that kind of experience that you're judging yourself, or is it more like you feel it again and you're living through it again?
Yeah. It could be a combination of both. Because within this experience, people always ask that, like, is this going to be scary? Will I be okay after this? I'm like, yes, you're going to be okay after this. And yes, some challenging things can come up for you. There's I forget the author, but the body keeps the score. So, us humans are the only ones that when something traumatic happens to us, we go like this. We tense up and we hold it in our body. So our cells keep that memory, keep that score. And if we don't find ways to release it, especially after the trauma happens, it's there and it's buried, and what causes dis-ease or disease in our body. So if we're not dealing with it, it's going to cause dis-ease or disease in our body. So yes, within the experience, what happens is you think of it this way: is the cells in the body are communicating with the medicine, and boom, we're going to experience what you've been ignoring. So if you've been ignoring the traumatic event that happened at war, you saw your buddy die, you didn't deal with this, you didn't deal with that, whatever that is, it's going to come back up, or it can come back. I don't want to say it will, but it can come back up. And I always tell people this is like any of the darkness that happens in life, face it. What are you here to teach me? And so when we can step into the darkness, that's where there's always that light at the end of the tunnel. And that's usually what happens with these experiences. What are you here to teach me? As we step in it, as you soldiers know, you're the tip of the spear. You're the ones going in there. You're the ones making change. You're the one protecting. You're the one stepping into the dark corners. And within that, some of that isn't non-familiar to you. You can step in and say, okay, what are you here to teach me? And within that, it's really beautiful when you can finally acknowledge that darkness, step into it, and like, oh, that's where my pain is. That's what I've been ignoring. And that's where the big change can happen. So when we can face that, that's where a lot of the, the big healing and the changes can happen in people, is when they face that challenge.
I keep seeing in the chat, some of the guys are talking about environment is important. And I remember hearing Sean Ryan talk about in his show about how he always goes to this spot that's way off, by a lake or a stream, very secluded. And it's him and the little group that, his coach and everybody that goes out there, it's very ritualistic as he puts it. Is that true too, that, the environment that you put yourself when you go to do this treatment, is that important too? Or is this just like, Zoloft, you just pop it in the morning and,
Especially the Zoloft becomes like an unconscious thing.
yeah.
And then we almost stopped treating it as a medicine. We just treat it as this is a thing I have to take to make my brain work. Whereas in psilocybin, it's all about set and setting. So the mindset, what I want to get out of this experience and where my mind is, and also your setting. So yes, the beautiful lake. Even if you're home, you want to make sure that when I'm leading ceremonies, it's a ceremonial space. When you step in it, you see gongs and musical instruments, and there's a bed and there's candles. And so you walk in and you feel the environment. So where people have made mistakes in the past are, I was at this underground rave and someone gave me mushrooms. How much did you take? I don't know. I just ate a bunch of them. Not the right mindset, not the right setting.
Yep.
So that's where a lot of the challenging experiences come up, is they don't know what they're taking.
Yeah.
And I can say that too with alcohol. When kids are experimenting with alcohol, they have no idea what, 100 proof is versus a beer, and they're drinking it because it tastes good. And, for 2 or 3 days they're sick.
Yep.
So it happens the same way. It's just really education around it, and you making sure that, yes, you have that right mindset and setting when you consume mushrooms, or any psychedelics for that matter. If you're going to try LSD or MDMA, make sure you're preparing yourself, ahead of time. You know, Eat healthy, stay away from other recreational drugs, stay away from alcohol. And I think one of the big things too is, if you are taking SSRIs or other antidepressants, talk to your doctor about it, because specifically with the SSRIs and like psilocybin or an ayahuasca, is you can have what's called serotonin syndrome. It's pretty rare, but you just don't want to mix anything that's going to cause you harm. So just making sure you're doing your research around utilizing big pharma and natural medicine. So you may have to titrate down to a lower amount. That's what I get a lot of my clients to do, is start titrating off their antidepressants, get down, and then boom, when we're clear of big pharma, we can start working with the natural body again, and then introduce natural medicine.
Which I'm assuming would probably be the goal for most of your clients anyways, is to get away from the big pharma stuff anyways.
Yeah.
So that would kind of, in a way, you're seeing your end result at the beginning.
Yeah.
There might be some troubling aspects after that, until you get through the process. But
yeah, there's turbulent water, let me tell you. Coming off of antidepressants and even staying off of them is not it's not one and done for everybody.
Right.
It can take time. It can get tough. It can get challenging. Ultimately, it's the will of the person. I think we all are easy to do that when we get faced with challenges. It's easy to retreat into the couch and watch Netflix. But if you want to make the change, it starts with, making behavioral changes too.
Yeah. I mean, so when I first got out, I went through, looking back now, it seems, like I was playing a playbook out of every other soldier's story, because, the trend is just so common. You went through that planning of, your own suicide and depression stage, to the I'm not fucked up, you're fucked up. There's nothing wrong with me. It's everybody else's problem. To the I don't want to be around anybody. I would literally come home, eat dinner, and go straight to the bedroom and stay the rest of the night in the bedroom till the next morning.
Wow.
And then I thought I had the best job ever. I became a truck driver, so I stayed in a truck, slept in a truck, and spent 6 weeks at a time in a truck. Didn't have to be around nobody.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was just getting more and more depressed and angry and raging and still not seeing it until finally the volcano just erupted. But
What was the wake-up call for you?
what's that?
What was the wake-up call for you?
So we had a hurricane in Georgia, and I came back home to help prepare the house for the storm. And everybody in Georgia lives in a trailer, so all the people that knew me came to my house. So I had myself, my wife, my son, my daughter, his girlfriend, his girlfriend's sister, his girlfriend's mom, and all these people in the house. And I already didn't do well in big crowds with a bunch of people. And after like day 3 of being trapped in this house, the storm had passed and we were under a curfew, and I could just feel the rage coming up. And I tried to go for a walk. And when I came back, my son was going to leave, and my wife had told him that she didn't want him to leave because there was still a curfew. And my son had already been in trouble with the law, and it set me off, and things almost turned physical. My wife had to get in the middle between me and him, and it didn't have to. I ended up throwing my son out of the house over everything. So my son ended up having to leave and not live with us anymore right after a hurricane passed through the house. One of the worst days of my life. But it was kind of a wake up call. I got lucky and I did go see a good therapist or a good psychologist. And he kind of, he did what psychologists do. They put me on medication and everything else, but he did kind of give me a wake up call to, I spent 68 months deployed, just between Iraq, Afghanistan, and Bosnia. So, he did kind of educate me that, what I went through wasn't normal. It's not what a normal person should have to live through,
Right.
And so it's taken some time, and then I did the same thing that every person does. I got better, and then he shut his practice down, and I didn't need the meds no more, and threw them away, and slowly went back down that hill again. And then we moved to Missouri, and this time I seen that trend going back down again before it got to that point again, and I went back. I went to the VA this time and got some help, and
Good.
now I'm trying to do it the right way, slowly, and deal with the problems and not just the symptoms, so that I can get off the meds and not have to get back on them.
Good for you. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's big. How's the relationship with your son now?
Rocky, we talked finally. I mean, this was probably 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. We probably didn't talk for 3 of those years. So these last couple of years, we talk now.
It's good.
I wouldn't say that we talk like father and son yet, but we at least communicate.
Yep. Not yet. Well, that's good. You're making the effort and making the changes. I'm sure he realizes that and sees that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you.
So, but yeah, it's it's been a long road, and as I'm learning going through Rick's class, it's even harder when you start having to look at yourself and realizing, I didn't even know that was a problem.
Yeah.
To address it.
The blind spots.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We all got them. Don't worry.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So the other question I do got is what is the difference between, say, mushroom and something like LSD? Because I know the VA has kind of dabbled in therapy with that as well for extreme cases.
Sure.
Because that's man-made, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right?
Yep.
So is that kind of getting back into like similar to like big pharma then, or
Yeah, but in it is because it's made in a lab. You can say that, but what it does to your brain is much more beautiful. You
okay?
know, a similar molecular structure as a psilocybin, as it expands your brain and it really opens you up to new ways of thinking and feeling. And I would say this too is it's not addictive in the sense that I need to have LSD in order to survive, in order to live. Whereas a an antidepressant can have that effect. It's like you have to have it in order to keep that neurological connection. LSD and psilocybin are same as boom. We're going to expand the brain into um, realizing our full potential, and those connections and that understanding can be made. And it isn't going to be the sense of I have to have this in order to remember this. So LSD is very mind expansive. So is psilocybin. The duration is much longer with the LSD experience. So it's almost like a heightened um, Adderall for 10 to 13 hours. So it's a long time. And I don't want to say Adderall. I'm just saying Adderall because maybe some people have taken that or a heightened sense. It's a very heightened awareness that you feel. But on a larger dose of LSD too, you can get some visual and some auditory, and things can get blurry. Um, so yeah, you can get some psychedelic feeling from the LSD as well, especially a little bit higher dose as psilocybin, because I think we use such a small amount of our brain, and what psychedelics too can do is really open up the full capacity of our brain. Ayahuasca is another one like that. And
Mm.
so we start seeing and hearing things differently. And it's fascinating. And it's funny that you mentioned this too, is like the VA on very rare and extreme cases are using LSD and maybe mushrooms. Um, Again, you guys are the tip of the spear. They're the ones that going into battle to help fight and save people, and yet they're also the ones that are say, "Oh yeah, you're on extreme cases. We'll let you try this LSD or mushrooms." And so it just goes again is like the bravery and the ones that are like I guess stepping in front of others to try things in order to make people safe. I would say make people safe. So a lot of the research has gone into whether it's soldiers or end of life crisis for cancer patients. We would hope that the U.S. government didn't want to wait until people are that sick or that injured to get this medicine. But that's kind of the way it is right now.
Yeah.
So we're hoping as the years go on and the more research happens, it'll become more accessible for people.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see, even once the research is there, the year is still coming to get, the FDA approval and everything else. I'm sure there'll be pushback from big pharma to slow that process down. I don't from everything I'm seeing, I don't see any way of stopping it, but I
Yeah.
definitely see it taking quite a while to get there.
Yeah, Big Pharma's already playing with the synthetic version of psilocybin.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, I haven't tried it, and so I'm not a really big fan of synthetic mushrooms. I'll always go to the natural if I can.
Yeah.
But you know, who's to say that that evolution isn't going to help more people? I don't know. Um, if big pharma gets in the game that way and it's helping people more and healing people more, great. But at the end of the day, they're always after the bottom line, which is, making money. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 10 years. We're either going to implode or we're going to all heal. So we'll see. We're always going to have that battle of light and darkness. We just hope that, more people wake up and more people get the healing that they need. And I think we will. I think we're in a good trajectory to make that happen, just due to the awareness. There's more people talking about it now.
Now, one more question. We was talking earlier about microdosing, right?
Yeah.
Is there any difference in success from somebody that does microdosing versus the going in and doing the treatments, or do you have to do both in order to see success?
Yeah, you don't have to do both. I would say those that are ready for a quicker version of healing, a one and done, or maybe a couple ceremonies can really help you rewire your brain quicker. Whereas this microdosing of psilocybin is more of a prolonged. Usually I get people on 2 months of a protocol for doing that. So they both work in a similar fashion. I would say a deeper psilocybin or any type of psychedelic experience will open you much quicker and can bring you healing quicker. But they both work on the brain the same way. What I do recommend people is, whether it's before or after, try microdosing. If you're scared of psychedelics, try microdosing. At least you're starting a relationship with the medicine. Post ceremony, let's say post session, people go into, they want to keep a little of the medicine inside them, like as a prolonged experience. You can do that. But you don't have to do one. You don't have to do the versus the other. You can do them side by side, or you can do them together. So, yeah.
So I'm assuming TRICARE doesn't cover stuff like this. So what are people looking at, if they're looking to go into this? What are they looking at for a cost?
Yeah. So I mean, typically, especially out here, there's a lot of underground markets that are doing this, anywhere between $60 to $150. There's a pretty wide range for a 2-month protocol for this type of medicine, for the microdosing. Like anything, I think everybody's got a neighbor that's a hippie, or know somebody who's selling weed, or usually those are the people that will have access to mushrooms. And I always tell people this is, trust your source. So don't buy anything weird off the street. Like, know a buddy who knows a buddy. And now a buddy through you. So like, if anybody's is more interested in it, I can send more information, especially like what to look out for. I've got an article that I've co-written around microdosing of psilocybin, the safety around it, what to look out for, how to do it. And so, there's information out there, and there's ways of getting it that are safe. So I would say, I guess I got to be safe on what I say, but yeah.
And that was kind of what I was getting at. I don't want people to be standing down there and getting stuff from the guy down on the corner and getting fentanyl and everything else, putting their stuff and whatever's getting mixed with it.
It's unfortunate. That's where we're at. But
it's about that bottom line. That's like what you said. People are just trying to make money. And again, like I said at the beginning of the show, until a couple of years ago, I didn't even know what any of this stuff was. I chose alcohol, and I've never done weed. I've never done any drugs other than alcohol. So all of this type of stuff was pretty new to me. I was even hesitant about even taking antidepressants and everything else. So and I argued with the psychiatrist when some of the stuff that he wanted to put me on, like Xanax and stuff like that. I refused to take it. And so
I mean, I would say I'm sure you, and there's so many other people similar, where big pharma has failed me. It's time to seek other alternatives. And that's where our plant allies, that's where the fungi, that's where the mushrooms have helped so many people. And and it will forever. So we're just remembering now of what works. And I always, it's treated as a lifestyle. It's not. I always tell people it's not one and done. I'm going to go do a ceremony and now my life has changed. It's like, no, you got to, the integration. Are you continuing to work out? Maybe it's breath work, meditation, eating well, staying hydrated. All of these things. It's a lifestyle change.
Yeah. I mean, I was drinking. I don't know. I was going through a bottle, probably not quite as bad as what some people, but I was going through probably a bottle every other day or so for a while.
Sure.
And, now I go through a bottle maybe a month, and maybe even longer. And a 6-pack or a 12-pack of beer lasts me easily a month. I don't drink a whole lot of beer.
Yeah.
I've changed that much, and now I'm starting to lose weight and work on that side of myself too. So yeah, I definitely get it. Now it's about damage control and fixing the things that I've done in the past, and one day at a time, one foot in front of the other.
That's it for you.
So, well, Lane, I definitely appreciate you coming on, man, because
absolutely.
There's definitely, and I will definitely be reaching out to you, and I hope some of the other people that have reached out to me will take the opportunity to do so as well. If they would like to reach out to you, how's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, I can leave I have an Instagram. It's at Carlson Lane. That's probably an easy way of doing it. You can reach out to me there. I have a website, what'syourmedicine.org. And we have our new one being built out right now for SOULINE. But right now, Instagram or the personal website's fine. The what'syourmedicine.org. And then you and I, obviously, if people want more information on, I guess, articles or products and stuff, I can share all that with you too. So if I'm not available, you can feel free to share with your colleagues and friends. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Well, everybody, I hope y'all tune in to our next show. We will be on later this week. Y'all take care, be safe, and have a good one.